In three, two.
Welcome to a special edition of Discussions with the Writer Fred, right here at Black Video News. Now, to all my viewers, this is a very important discussion, so stay tuned because this affects all of us. If you have a niece, a daughter, a cousin, or any young person that's out there in the community, they are susceptible and vulnerable to what I like to call the sick predators. And just some of the facts will tell you what's happening out there. Sex with children has become a big business in America. And especially affects, now I'm not putting aside anyone else, but especially affects our young Black daughters. I think the figure is like 54% of those involved in sexual exploitation are your Black girls. So stay tuned. This can affect you. So Malcolm X once said, the most disrespected person in America is the Black woman. The most unprotected woman in America is the Black woman. And the most neglected person in America is the Black woman. And therefore, one of the most susceptible persons out there to the predators are our young Black girls. So today I have two experts and regular citizens.
Concerned citizens.
Concerned citizens. So we're going to discuss this issue with them. As you all know, Dr. Sharon Michael Shadwell is almost like my partner now on Discussions with the Writer Fred. And we're also very fortunate to have an expert, Dr. Leslie Branch, administrator in higher education out of New York City, to join us. Dr. Branch, welcome to Discussions with the Writer Fred.
Thank you, Fred. I appreciate you having me, and thanks also to Dr. Sharon Michael Chadwell as well.
Okay.
Welcome aboard.
Okay, Sharon, what define the nature of this problem for our viewers?
Well, first of all, we're talking about the high percentage of missing Black men, women, and children, where they're so overrepresented in sexual and human trafficking, but there is little discussion on the mainstream media as to where they are. So when I got with Fred, I said, we need to go ahead and have a serious discussion online so that we can become more aware of the implications for the Black community.
Why are we so vulnerable?
I think historically that Blacks have been vulnerable from slavery to where our bodies weren't ours, our minds, quote unquote, weren't ours. And those thoughts and feelings and belief systems have transcended from one generation to another in terms of the American social system. And so in our off-camera discussions, we were talking about, is this vulnerability a factor of the breakdown in the Black family? And unfortunately, we're seeing a lot of homes where there are no fathers, to where the girls don't have a role model as to how a man can be. Boys don't have a role model in the family as to how a man can be. So they may be looking at alternate routes or models as to what a man can be.
Okay. Dr. Branch, do you see it the same way?
So I probably come at it from maybe a quantitative or an economics point of view.
Okay.
And so, Fred, when you opened up the piece, you framed it or couched it using the words business. That to me is disturbing, and it speaks to the commodification of Black bodies. And as you know, from times of slavery, the Black body was commodified. It
Right.
was chattel. Enslaved Africans were chattel. They were not people. And so I would suggest, in some ways, perhaps a system designed to terrorize Black and brown bodies from the inception of slavery is perhaps making a nuanced reappearance, as it were, in the capture of Black and brown bodies. Um, and so maybe, that is a frame that we look at it from. So it should probably be no surprise that the notion of uh, the sex trades and such, pornography is one of the highest grossing businesses in this country, and I would dare say in other countries as well. But back to this notion of the commodification of the Black body for economic gain of one group, otherwise colloquially known as slavery, could very well be the thing that we are witnessing.
Okay, you mentioned slavery, and it makes me think back on the perception of Black people in the scale, what Thomas Jefferson called the scale of beauty, with at the very top beauty being the white woman, at the very bottom being the Black woman. And then in his books on Notes on Virginia, he made the statement that Blacks are not equipped for love in the normal way. It's all sex. And it seems as though that might be carrying over today, where these predators look at our young girls from that standpoint. What do you think?
I'm thinking that you're right on that, in that even if you look at how society might look at a 10-year-old Black boy, for example, they see him differently than a 10-year-old white boy. They see the 10-year-old Black boy as a grown man, and they still see a 10-year-old white boy as a boy. And the same thing about the 10-year-old Black girl. She is seen to be as grown. We call her, she's grown.
Yeah.
But in the white girl who's the same age, it's not considered grown.
She's still a little girl.
She's still a little girl. So we have some societal definitions as to what is a Black boy and a Black girl.
Who are they? Who are the clients? Do we have an idea who the clients are?
Oh gosh, the clients can be any and anybody. We're seeing now a trend where Black children, Black girls, Black women and Black men are being pimped online for years. We're seeing people who will buy a virgin child and sexually assault them at a high premium. We're seeing episodes where these children may be used in satanic rituals. So the clients are out there, either locally, nationally, and some may be shipped off internationally.
Okay, when I say clients, are the clients who are actually buying this service? Can you define the white, Black, or is there a Dr. Brett? You want to take on that question? Can we define who they are?
Well, obviously, it would be someone who has the wherewithal to make such purchases. And so that could be people in the U.S., it could be people outside of the U.S. But to double back to a point that you made, Fred, with regard to Thomas Jefferson, Carlo Linnaeus, either an 18th or a 19th century philosopher, created this notion of classifications of the races. And At the top of the classification were the white people, and they were imbued with all of the beauty and skills. And
Yeah.
as you mentioned, similarly to Thomas Jefferson's, the black people were at the bottom. They were lazy, shiftless, according to his classification, and there was nothing redeemable about them. And so Tressie McMillan Katam wrote an op-ed in the New York Times a couple of years ago, maybe last year, that talked about how even Black families, unfortunately, sexualize young girls. And how even in schools, a young girl who is Black doesn't deserve to be protected from teachers or by teachers, whereas white young girls deserve it. And so there's this thing that just happens, that the bodies of Black women become sexualized, whereas the bodies of white
Yeah.
become sanctified, if you will.
Good.
And so my mind also goes back to, I guess, some things that I have read during my years of study, when the missionaries went to Africa to attempt to civilize, if you will, folks that they characterized as savage in African countries. Our forebears were working around in their God-given attire, and nobody was hot and bothered. But when these missionaries and such went over and saw our African brothers and sisters walking around, because nature didn't need to provide clothing for them, these folks were hot and bothered, and I guess just seeing something that they had never seen before in their own kind, just roused them. And there you have I guess perhaps the genesis of the sexualization and the trafficking and the like of Black and brown bodies.
So those folks, whereas our ancestors, it was just a normal way of living. But when they come over, they see it as some kind of sexual
Right.
connotation.
Even if you go to some of the most remote parts in, I guess, the Amazon, it's a similar thing. Clothing is not something that is the cultural norm. And whatever attire they do, made out of, I guess, plants and other things. But for other people, I guess they are just not able to control their urges based on what they see.
What would you say, for our ancestors, it was looked upon as a positive or just neutral? For those people, they looked at it from a negative perspective, from a sexual.
Well, right. And so when you think about the notion of cultural norms and the notion of imposing one's culture upon another, anywhere where people, I guess, were running around in their natural attire, they were considered savages and uncivilized, and therefore needed saving, needed civilizing by the folks that Carlo Linnaeus and or Thomas Jefferson placed at the top of the category, who were suited up to the nines.
It's interesting because they were considered savages and uncivilized by the very people who were savages and uncivilized, by the way they treated us in the past.
Yes.
Definitely.
Okay, let's take a break here. When we come back, let's talk about the lack of the media exposure that our kids get. And then, Dr. Brad, I'd like to talk to you, if possible, about public policy, what is being done at the national, state, and local level. Okay?
Okay.
We'll be right back with discussion with the writer Fred on a very important topic. So stay tuned. Don't go anywhere, because like I said, this could affect you.
1, 6, or a dozen trees, no job is too big or too small. Booker's Tree Services is a certified arborist and state licensed company. On the ground or in the air, we are here to take care of all your tree needs, from stump grinding, tree pruning, tree trimming, tree removal, and much more. Call the professionals to help manage your commercial or residential needs. Don't let your trees make you nervous. Call for a free estimate today at Booker Tree Service, 210-657-8085.
40% of food in America is never eaten.
1 in 6 seniors faces the threat of hunger, and millions more live in isolation.
America, let's do lunch.
Drop off a hot meal and say a quick hello. Volunteer for Meals on Wheels by donating your lunch break at americaletsdolunch.org.
Marie, you have prediabetes.
Prediabetes? I don't have time to eat right or exercise. I'm a busy mom.
Oh, you're a busy mom.
Yeah.
This is great news. Busy moms never get prediabetes.
Wait, what?
Let me just... Yeah, this is all the people at risk for prediabetes, and way over here, busy moms. No?
Hello, I'm Tony Hendricks, Chief Operating Officer at Lewis Funeral Home. Lewis Funeral Home has been serving San Antonio and surrounding areas for over 100 years. Lewis Funeral Home's ultimate goal is to help those families in their time of need. If your family is ever in need, please feel free to call us at Lewis Funeral Home, 210-227-7281, or check us out on our website at lewisfuneralhome.com.
Nothing to do this week? Don't miss another event. Go to blacksinsanantonio.com for our event calendar. The home of the largest business directory in San Antonio with an African American focus. Sign up today for our weekly e-blast and text message alerts. Help us make this a better community. Connect, empower, grow.
Welcome back to Discussions with the Writer Fred on a very, very important topic. Again, I'm here with Dr. Sharon Michael Shadwell and Dr. Leslie Branch, talking about the exploitation of our children in sex trafficking. And so, Sharon, you wanted to go into this?
Yes, Leslie, you know, when you and I were talking about this subject, we were talking about all kind of possibilities as to why this is happening. I read some stats where pimps are making about $33,000 a week on the trafficking of Black men, children, and women. And then we start hearing stories about the trafficking of humans during Super Bowl games and major sports events. Then I was noticing that Atlanta is now being considered the center of human trafficking, whereby $260 million is being spent on the services of captured individuals. So I guess a question I want to ask you is What part do you think the Black community is playing, either directly or indirectly, in these actions?
So
Are
that's
we
a great
guilty as charged?
so that's a great question, and there's enough, I guess, blame to go around. So I wouldn't put the entire onus on the Black community. I would implicate certain structures that may permit this phenomenon that we are seeing to take place. So in the earlier opening, there was a discussion about the quote unquote breakdown of the Black family, the absence of fathers, for why this might be happening. I don't know that I would necessarily entirely agree with that. And because when a father is absent from his family in a white community, it's usually because he's at work. And if a father is absent from his family in the Black community, it is said because he is either imprisoned or dead. For whatever reason the father is absent, the net effect is still the same. The man is absent. And so what I would suggest is that there perhaps needs to be some structural changes that mitigates this notion of absence, right? Particularly in this country. Why would a white man be absent so much because of work? We get 30 days vacation in most instances, but we barely take any of it because we're so busy being a cog in the wheel of the capitalist machine. And, you know, we speak about valuing family, but it doesn't show up in our actions. I would suggest to you that in the Black community, it may not be a notion of absence because of neglect, but in this economy, and I just read something today that the economy has dropped, the unemployment rate has dropped to 3.5%, the lowest it's ever been in 50 years. But that's because people have to work 50 million jobs to make ends meet. And so you have a lot of latchkey kids who, you know, have to, I guess, be responsible and try to look after themselves because mom and dad have to work so many jobs to make ends meet. So I wouldn't put the whole onus on a breakdown in the Black family. There's a structure that permits this to perpetuate, and I think we need to interrogate that.
Okay.
Let's talk about the characteristics of the people being trafficked.
So one of the things that I think we need to understand and become more aware of, especially those of us who go out to malls or games or travel, is that what are the characteristics of a person who may be being trafficked? This person may be malnourished and lacks any type of medical needs. Other thing that I didn't even think of is that they may be branded with a barcode or a number by pimps to show his ownership, his or her ownership.
Wait, a barcode or a number? Oh, God.
The other thing is that this person is not in control of his or her own money. There are no financial records or no bank account. And, you know, and I thought about that. How many people do we know do not have bank accounts? I thought everybody had a bank account. But there may be people who maybe purposely do not have a bank account for whatever reason, either by choice or they have been told they cannot have a bank account. And then finally, they owe a large debt, and they need some means of being able to pay off that debt.
So those are the characteristics of the.
Those can be some of the characteristics.
Okay.
You know, when you owe a lot of money, that person is really under a lot of stress. And you've got a lot of women, I mean, you say women in particular, who may allow themselves to go into prostitution to pay bills.
We haven't. You didn't have down there a drug addiction.
Well, that they owe money. They also owe money, and they
To support the drug addiction.
to support them.
Okay. Let's turn to the lack of media coverage of Black kids who are missing. Amsterdam News wrote an article said that African American female goes missing and there's no radar so low that she won't fly beneath it. And it seems to be a problem with our girls getting coverage when they're missing. Dr. Branch, would you like to address that?
Sure. In a couple of things that I have published, and one of the areas of my research is this notion of rhetoric and how elites set policy agendas and use their rhetoric to decide, what's going to make it to the agenda. And so, as we would have it, it's not the missing Black and brown females and missing other people of color isn't making it to media attention, number one, because the media cycle has just been insane, given the current reality within which we live, number one. But secondly, because the value that we represent as Black and brown people to society just isn't that much, it apparently doesn't make it to the news cycle or the public agenda. And so what comes to mind when I think about this was when Martin Luther King Jr. had a meeting with LBJ as it related to the passage of a civil rights bill. LBJ essentially told Dr. King that he couldn't push through policy on a civil rights bill because he just wouldn't be able to get the votes of the Southern Democrats to push it through. And so, similar to what Dr. King did, is I think what we as people of color, particularly Black people, need to do today is resort to protest politics. And so it doesn't have to be a binary ballot box or protest politics. It should be binary. It should be protest politics and ballot box. And so when people won't listen to you as a result of the ballot box, you gather and you protest and you call attention to the issue in such a way that the news media has to pay attention to you. I would suggest that's how the whole notion of Black Lives Matter got started. That movement kind of, took off because of the worldwide protests, if you would, that happened not only in the US, but other countries as well, with regard to the slaughter of Black and brown bodies, which seemed like every week in this country.
Yeah. So is that like a return to the 1960s when Dr. King used protest politics and used it well against Lyndon Baines Johnson?
Oh, so here's the thing. In this country, to my mind, we frame things as binary. It's either or. It should not be a binary, right? So you do what you need to do to get the results that you need to get. Now, I'm not suggesting, lawlessness and the like, but there is an urgent matter that is happening that the people that we need to speak for us are not doing it. And that's the news media. And so how do you get the attention of the news media? You organize in mass, collective action. And I would suggest to you, in this country, the narrative is one about individualism and personal responsibility. And while that is, something that should be the case, I would suggest to you, let's look at what people in the legislative arena do when they want to get something passed. They engage in collective action. They work together. And in working together, that's how they get what it is that they want. I would suggest to you also, this notion of hard work as the way to the American dream is the narrative that is put forth. And yay and amen to working hard. But if you look at how the wealth that has been amassed in this country has been amassed, it wasn't because of the hard work alone of those who are wealthy. And so in order to get this problem in front of the cameras and onto an agenda, there needs to be a ballot box as well as collective protest, whether that is letter writing, whether that is emailing your elected officials, emailing TV stations, doing programs like this, utilizing social media. So it's collective protest. And one of the things that I plan on doing in the new year, I have a family member who shared with us recently that her daughter wasn't abducted, but there was a suspicious van following her. And, this, thankfully, nothing happened. But one of the things that I plan on trying to do is working with this family member. And so this is how my young family member was not abducted. There was an Uber that happened to, be seeing this transaction as it was attempting to take place. The Uber then said to my family member, listen, get in, where is it that you're going? And so the Uber took her to her car and told her, look, you need to be careful because this is happening. She only recently shared that with her mother a few days ago. And so back to this notion of collective action. If we in our communities know this is happening, we band together and we keep our children safe. My child is not my child alone. I remember coming up in the 70s. If I did something wrong, my mother knew about it before I got home. We've gotten away from this notion of looking out for one another, and I think it's high time that we get back to it.
Okay.
I want to talk about this
Quickly, because
van
we're
real
running out of
quick.
time.
I know, real quick. If you see a suspicious van, usually the ones that Dr. Branch was talking about are total darked out. There are no windows, and there are usually padlocks. So be on the lookout for those type of vans.
Okay. Well, I want to thank you, ladies, for joining me, Discussions with Wright and Fred, for a very, very, very important topic. And I think next year we need to follow up.
Yes.
Talk about what Dr. Branch was talking about, how we collectively protest to make the community itself and the public policymakers more aware, and the media more aware of this. And hopefully that all our viewers, please share this and send it to all your followers, because this is great information that we need to know about what's happening in our community to our kids. And don't think you're exempt, because you're not. I want to thank my guests for joining me here today, Dr. Sharon Michael Shadwell, and I look for you to be here soon again, and Dr. Leslie Branch for all your expertise. And to my viewers, this is a very important show and program, and share it with all your viewers and friends anywhere that you could share this show, because remember, you are not exempt from this possibility. This is Fred Williams telling our story our way.